Hello there, I am Dr. C.N. Okolubo. You're welcome to my YouTube channel where we'll be solving problems relating to business mathematics, business statistics, analysis for business decision, as well as other related topics. I want to encourage you as you go through these videos with me, you have your paper, your pen, and your calculator to solve these problems with me. Also, please do like, share, and subscribe so that you can receive notifications for upcoming videos that we'll be uploading. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me once again in our lecture series on frequency distribution. In our lecture today, we are going to look at elements of a group distribution table. Group distribution table. We want to identify the different key elements that are terms that are used in describing values on the distribution table. And as we look at what we have on the board, we'll be naming them one after the other. Come along with me as we look at what we have. Here, this is an illustration of a table in which we have class given and then we have the frequency. Now, one of the first things we want to learn about elements of group frequency table is identifying what we mean by class limits. Now, there are two class limits here. We have what we call the lower class limit. Now, label this lower class limits, and then we also have the upper class limits. All right. Now, for the first class, the lower class limit is 15, and the upper class limit is 24. That you need to know. The lower class limit is 15 and the upper class limit is 24. For this one, the lower class limit is 25 and the upper class limit is 34. And then we can repeat this throughout each of the classes, each of the classes we're given. So for this one, it's 35 and 44. For this class, it's 45, that's the lower class limit, and we have 54. We have 55 and 64. We have 65 and 74. We have 75 and 84. And we have 85 and 94. And just now you understand what we mean by upper class limit and the lower class limit. Now, but what do we call the class size? It's what we call class size. Class size refers to the total number of elements in each class. The total number of elements in each class. In this case, for each of the class that we have here, you will realize that we have from 15 to 24. In the first class, we have 15 to 24. And so for us to count, we realize that the class size is what? Is 10. So let's count. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So for the first class is 10. And for each of all the classes, we have 10. So the class size is 10 for the class size. Now, what do we now call class interval? Class interval, that's another term we want to know about. We have class interval. The class interval is the difference between the upper class limits and the lower class limits. The difference between the upper class limits and the lower class limits. In this case, we are going to have 24 minus 15. and that will give us 9. So our class interval will be 9. There's a difference between the upper class limit and the lower class limit, and that means for all the classes we are going to have 9 as the class interval. Take note of that. So for this one, it will be 34 minus 25, and that will give you 9. So we can have 9 throughout each of the classes. So the next one is 44 minus 35, and we have 9. The next one is 54 minus 45, and that is 9, and on like that. Okay, so the class interval is 9. Now what do we now call class boundary? A class boundary, that's another thing you want to learn. Class boundaries. Class boundary. Now the class boundary is derived by having the difference between the upper class limit of one class with the lower class limit of the next class, and we divide by 2. In this case, look at up here, please zoom to this point. You will see that for the first class, our upper class limit is 24, and for the next class, the lower class limit is 25. So if we have 25 minus 24, we are going to have 1. 25 minus 24 is 1. Now we divide that 1 by 2, and if you divide by 2, you are going to have 0.5. Now that 0.5, you will now deduct it from each of the lower class limit of all the classes and add 0.5 to the upper class limit of all the classes. Let me come again with that. To derive the class boundary, we find the difference between the upper class limit of a class and the lower class limit of the next class. In this case, 24 is the upper class limit of the first class, and 25 is the lower class limit of the next class. So if we find the difference between 25 and 24 is 1, and we divide 1 by 2, so that we have 0.5. That value of 0.5, we will now deduct it from all the lower class limits of all the classes and add to the upper class limit of all the classes. That's what so we are going to do minus 0.5 and plus 0.5 for all the classes. In this case, if we have 15 minus 0.5, we are going to have 14.5. So, and we add 0.5 to 24, we are going to have 24.5. I trust you are following. So the next will be 25 minus 0.5. That will give us 24.5 to 34.5, because we are going to add 0.5 to 34. Now the next one is 35. The next class is 34.5 to 44.5. So we do this through all the classes. We deduct 0.5 from the lower class limit of each class and add 0.5 to the upper class limit. So you see that we call the class boundaries, another name we call the class boundary is the true class limit, because you see that it joins the both classes at the same point. So if you have to construct a histogram, there will be no space between the bars, as we're going to see in another lecture as we look at later. So the next class here will be 44.5 to 54.5. I want you to complete this at your time. Then Last but not the least, we're going to look at class mark. The class mark or the midpoint. The class mark or the midpoint. The class mark or the midpoint is derived by adding the upper class limit plus the lower class limit of each class and dividing it by 2. That's the average of the upper class limit and the lower class limit. For the first class, it will be 15 plus 24. 15 plus 24, that gives us 39 divided by 2, that was 19.5. So the midpoint of the class is 19.5. For the next class, it is 25 plus 34. 25 plus 34, that gives us 59. So 59 divided by 2 will give us what? 29.5. To give us 29.5. The next class is 35 plus 44. This will give us what? 79. So 79 divided by 2, that will give us 39.5. So I want you to take note that there is a difference of 10. There's a difference of 10, and this is reflected in the difference in the upper class limit and the lower class limit of each class. Look at, please come over to this side. You will notice that we have 15 as the lower class limit here, and we have 25. So 25 minus 15 is 10. 34 minus 24 is 10. 35 minus 25 is 10. 44 minus 34 is 10. So when you have derived the class mark for the first class, what you can do simply is to add the difference in the class lower or upper class limits to all these values, and then you can fill them up as you desire in your work. We've gone through this lecture now on the elements of group frequency table. I will encourage you to go through the lectures again, and so that you can master, because in the next classes we're going to have, we'll be using these terms a lot to drive home our point of whatever we're going to be saying. Remember, if you have not subscribed, please do subscribe, share, like, and place a comment in the comment section of this video. God bless you.
Yeah.